Hi everyone, and welcome to today's 4th grade informative writing lesson. Today we're working on section 2, lesson 35. My name is Mrs. Calm and I'll be your teacher for today's lesson. Let's review the last lesson. We talked about the structure of our middle paragraphs and we learned how to incorporate more advanced elaborative techniques. Now, a few lessons ago, we learned the basic structure of T, 3A, 3B, and W. We are still following the same structure. Just now, our A and B sentences are going to be made up of quotes, paraphrases, and own thoughts and ideas. You want to make sure that when you have your 3 to 4 sentences about A and your 3 to 4 sentences about B, that there are a balance of quotes, paraphrases, and own thoughts and ideas. So we're still sticking to the same structure, we're just adding more elaborative techniques in there. Now, we're going to break down each of these elaborative techniques in the next few lessons. So we're going to do a lesson on quotes, a lesson on paraphrasing, and a lesson on own thoughts and ideas. So you can really understand how to write and use each of these elaborative techniques in your essays. And then we'll put it all together in the end. Now today's focus is going to be on quotes. So the learning objective is to learn how to use quotes in an informative essay. So let's go ahead and get started with today's lesson. When writing quotes, you are going to include them in your A and B sentences. Remember, our topic sentence hasn't changed and our wrap-up sentence hasn't changed. All we're working on are those A and B sentences. And because you have to write 3 to 4 sentences about A and 3 to 4 sentences about B, you have about 6 to 8 sentences that you need to fill with quotes, paraphrasing, and own thoughts and ideas. So let's talk a little bit more about quotes today. Quotes are when you take the exact words from the text. It is super important that you don't change anything when you take a quote. You are actually copying word for word, okay? But you have to make sure that you do a few things. The first rule is we only want 1 to 2 quotes per middle paragraph. Try to incorporate 1, but don't do more than 2. You don't want to do too many quotes, okay? So 1 to 2 quotes in T1, 1 to 2 quotes in T2, and 1 to 2 quotes in T3. The second rule is you must reference your source before or after your quote. Because you're copying word for word from the text, you have to let your reader know exactly where you got it from. So it's important that you reference before or after you write the quote. And the last rule is that you have to make sure you put quotation marks at the beginning and the end of the quote to let your reader know that you copied it word for word from the text and you took it into your essay as a quote. That's why you put the quotation marks around the beginning and the end of the quote. Okay, if you don't, then you're just copying. But if you put the quotation marks and you reference where you got it from, then you're using a quote as an elaborative technique, and that's perfectly fine. If you look on the screen, this is an example quote. I want to show you all the different parts of it. You can see in the beginning I referenced. I told exactly what article I took the quote from. I said in the article, Alligators at Risk, it states that. And then the exact words that I copied from the text are inside the quotation marks. The American alligator can be found in the wetlands of the southern United States. That is word for word exactly how it shows up in the alligator passages. You cannot change anything when you are quoting, okay? And you have to make sure you put a quotation mark at the beginning of the quote and the end of the quote. You can see I didn't put the quotation mark in front of the very beginning of the sentence because that was my EBT. That wasn't taken from the text. The words I took from the text are in the quotation marks. So I did all the rules. I made sure I put quotation marks. I made sure I copied word for word. I made sure that I told exactly what source I got it from, either before or after the quote, which in this case I did before. So we're going to practice with the alligator passages, and I'm going to show you how you can take a quote from the text and bring it into your essay. So you know the alligator passages. The one I'm going to be using is Alligators at Risk today. So let me show you on the document camera This is the Alligators at Risk passage. Now, let's say that the activity or whatever assignment we're doing asked us to take a quote from this passage about how the Chinese alligator and the American alligator are similar. Okay, let's just say that we were writing a paragraph on that. It was about how the American and Chinese alligator are similar, and we need to find a quote in this article and put it into our writing. How would we write that? Well, I'll tell you right here, I can see the perfect quote that we can copy. The Chinese alligator is very similar to the American alligator in appearance, but they are much smaller. That's a perfect quote I can take. Now, if I wanted to bring that into my essay, okay, this is exactly how I would do it. Let's pretend I was writing my essay, and this is another page. I'm just going to write it down here so you can see it. I would put I'm going to reference first. In the article, Alligators at Risk, and I'm going to underline my title, comma, it says that, and now I'm going to start putting this exact quote. I'm going to change my marker color so you can see, and I'm going to put it in quotation marks because I am copying the exact words. The Chinese alligator is very similar to the American. Again, I'm copying word for word. American alligator in appearance. Comma, but they are much smaller. Period, close the quotation marks. So I want to point out a few things to you. First, I want you to see that I put my quotation marks at the beginning and the end of the exact words that I quoted from this passage. Okay, that way my reader knows everything inside these quotation marks is quoted directly from the text. Then I want you to notice that I told you exactly where I got it from by stating EBT and the article title. Okay, so you always have to reference before or after. So it's pretty easy taking a quote. Okay, you just have to make sure you reference, and the most important piece is that you put those quotation marks around the beginning and the end of the quote. Okay? All right, let's go back over to the PowerPoint presentation. And now I'm going to have you take out the classwork assignment. Okay? Now this assignment has screenshots from different passages, and you're going to be writing quotes from these screenshots, okay? So we're going to do number 1 together. There's 3 questions total, and then you're going to do number 2 and 3 on your own, and then we'll review them, okay? So let's go ahead and start with number 1. We'll do this one together. All right, let's make sure you can see this okay. Okay, the directions say to write a quote about the Chinese alligator being found in the subtropical regions of China. So we need to read inside this screenshot of the passage and find a quote. So find a sentence in here that talks about the Chinese alligator being found in the subtropical regions of China. Now I know this is small, so I'm going to get really close. And you guys should have this in front of you too, but just in case, I'm going to skim through here and see if I see anywhere it talks about this Chinese alligator being found in the subtropical regions of China. You can see right here, I underlined it exactly where it says it. So I'm going to need to take this entire sentence and put it into a quote. So I'm going to have to say, The Chinese alligator can be found in the subtropical regions of China and low-lying areas such as rivers, streams, and marshes. You have to take the exact words, okay? So when I go, now remember the direction said to write a quote. So on these lines, I'm going to say, in the passage, alligators at risk, underline the title, comma, it states that, and now I'm going to start copying my exact quote. I'm going to put quotation marks. The Chinese, I'm just copying word for word, alligator can be found in the subtropical regions of China in low-lying areas such as rivers, comma, streams and marshes. Streams and marshes. And now that's the end. I'm going to put my period and then the quotation mark. Okay, so my self-assessment, I'm going to make sure that I referenced before the quote or after the quote. And you can see right here I did before. I told you exactly where I got it from. It was in the passage, Alligators at Risk. And then I want to make sure that I put a quotation mark at the beginning and the end of the exact copied text. And you can see here, I put it right there and right there. And in the middle is exactly that exact sentence, word for word. I always want to double check, make sure I got it word for word. Okay, that's how you do it. We've gone over a couple examples. Now it is your turn. If you turn it over, you're going to see numbers 2 and 3. And they have the screenshot here. So for number 2, it says, write a quote about alligators creating nests from nearby vegetation. So you can go in, I've already underlined where the area is. So you can see exactly where it talks about them creating nests. And you're going to take that exact sentence and write a quote. And then down here in the second one, it says, write a quote about American alligators creating holes. Again, you're going to take that exact sentence and write it in a quote down here. Make sure that you reference, okay, and make sure that you put those quotation marks at the beginning and the end of the exact words that you took from the text. So I want you to pause this video, do number 2 and number 3, and then come back on and push play. Go ahead and begin. Okay, welcome back. If you're back on the video and you push play, that means you are done with number 2 and number 3, and you wrote quotes for both of them. All right, so let's get back to the presentation. Now, you just completed an activity, which means I want you to self-assess. All right, so I wrote some example answers that you could have for number 2 and number 3. So I want you to compare and make sure that yours looks similar to mine. Now, we already went over number 1, so you don't need to do that. But number 2, I decided to do according to paragraph 4 of Alligators at Risk. So I was telling you to do that. You may have not used that exact language. That's fine. I do want you to check a few things. I want you to make sure you referenced at the beginning or at the end of your quote. You told exactly where you got it from. And I also want you to make sure that you have a quotation mark at the beginning of the sentence and the end of the sentence that you copied. Okay, so please take a few minutes to self-assess. This is you checking your own paper. Make sure you referenced and make sure you have a quotation mark at the beginning and at the end. Make sure your period is inside the quotation mark. It should be period and then the quotation mark. Okay, if you need more time, you can push pause. Next, once you've taken the time to go through and self-check, I want you to take a minute, maybe 2 minutes at the most, to reflect. You've just got done learning about quotes, and then you practice taking quotes from text and writing them. And now I want you to ask yourself a few questions. What did I do well? Think about it. Maybe you were able to take the quote and you remembered the quotation marks. Think about what you did well. Then ask yourself, what did I forget? Did you forget to state specifically where you got it from? Maybe you forgot to put the punctuation inside the quote. Take a look at what you did and see if you have everything or if you forgot something. And then I want you to ask yourself, what mistakes did I make? And if you didn't make any mistakes, that's okay. But if you did, that's okay too. I just want you to make a mental note of it so the next time you know that you can prevent those mistakes and you know your strengths and weaknesses. All right, now that you've self-assessed and reflected, I want you to take this time to revise if needed. First, if you forgot something, I want you to take time now and add it. Then, if you made any mistakes, I want you to take time now and fix them. And then I want you to do that last check of capitalization, spelling, and clarity. This is all for you to spend time revising to make sure your paper is the best that it can be before you submit it to your teacher or your parent. All right, the next piece is for you to show what you know. This is for you to show off your skills. It is a quiz. It says Lesson 35, quiz at the top. I'm going to show you it underneath the document camera real quick so you can make sure that you have the right sheet. Just like we did in the practice, you will see on the quiz, you have 2 questions. Okay, you are going to use these screenshots of the articles and you're going to write a quote from the text about each topic. So you can see here for number 1, I want you to write a quote about what cold-blooded means. So go in here, find where it talks about what cold-blooded means, and then take that sentence and write a quote. And then for number 2, write a quote about the many species of mammals. So find a sentence that talks about the many species of mammals and make a quote down here. Make sure you reference and make sure you put your quotation marks at the beginning and the end. Okay, this is a quiz. It's important to do your best because it is graded. So I want you to take your time, go through, make sure you reference, make sure you put a quotation mark at the beginning and a quotation mark at the end. So go ahead, pause this video. Complete your quiz, and when you're done, come back on and push play. Welcome back. If you're back on this video, it means you have completed your entire quiz. You did number 1 and number 2, so awesome job. Okay, moving right along. The last part is a homework assignment. Your homework is a screenshot of one section of a climate passage, and then you're going to pull 2 quotes from there. Okay, and on the homework, I'm going to show you up close. It says read the article climate zones, which is just a screenshot here, and then write 2 quotes about climate zones. So you can pull any information from here, just 2 quotes, put 1 here and 1 here, as long as it's about the climate zones. And make sure you reference and you put your quotation marks at the beginning and the end. And you've been working on this the whole lesson, so this should be pretty easy for you to complete. Today's ending quote is, great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance. Okay, so stick with it. This doesn't matter if you're a strong writer, a weak writer, a strong reader, a weak reader. It's not all about strength. It's by your perseverance. Stick with it, keep doing it, and practice it. And you all have been doing awesome. So keep up the great work. I will see you at the next lesson.